So Jack and I piled into the car, sat in the back or the front, I don't remember. We were exhausted and everything, and he just sort of stuck his nose to the white line and drove us non-stop to Frisco. When we got here, I remember it was being sometime like early in the morning, and all of the streets with all of the bars that Jack and the so-called beats used to hang out was sort of very festive. There were banners hung out, all advertising Pull My Daisy, and inviting people to come and party. And someone had even put up a sign over one of the street signs calling it Beat Street, which I thought was particularly hilarious. So we schmoozed around there and found ourselves a motel rather, which was a place that was usually set up for black musicians, a place where a whole band could come, and there was no real racism evident there, except that they weren't too comfortable with two people like myself, right, and Jack being there. So we settled in and we were very comfortable. And at one point, something like in the morning, I think it was, a note came to me inviting us to a reception. I think this was the day before the screening of the film. Screening at the Matador Club, which was run by a writer, a Hemingway aficionado named Barnaby Conrad, a bullfighter writer in the Hemingway mode. He had this bar and he asked us to come like something like 5 o'clock. Jack, at the time, I just have to tell you, was wearing what he usually wore, his lumberjack, red and black lumberjacket stuff, dungarees maybe, something like that, a same kind of shirt. And I was just wearing what I was wearing at the time. I didn't have anything I could really change into, and what I had I thought could be improved on, so I did what I usually did. On these occasions I went to the first thrift store I saw, and bought a tuxedo for 10 cents, the best buy that you could have, and wore that. So I appeared with Jack. Jack, as I say, what he was wearing, I had a tuxedo on and a white t-shirt and sneakers. I probably was wearing slacks. That time I had a lot of black curly hair and I had a gold tooth. And when the bouncer opened the door, after we rang the bell, and he looked at us, I think all of the prejudices and all of the views of the bikers and of the evils, especially of the artists and the poets, must have come into his mind, because he said this was a private party, not realizing that we were the guests, as it were, of honor. I told him that, and finally Barnaby Conrad arrived. At that point, again, all these class distinctions came into place. And he looked at us, and to me, there was this utter look of disappointment. They didn't see any way clear that he could extend all of his, what had to be his ordinary graciousness in a situation like this. In short, the fucking guy was afraid of us. So we come into the bar. It was pretty empty at the time. We sat down at the bar, and actually Conrad disappeared. So I was able to view everything that was going on in the mirror. That was stuff that was going on behind me, and Jack sat next to me. People drifted in, and during that time, Conrad greeted them. He knew them all. It was a private party. Everybody had been invited. And as they came in, they would all look over in our direction. Barnaby, Conrad made no effort in order to be the host, to draw them out, bring them over and saying, this is blah, 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 this is blah, 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 go through that whole shtick. So after a while, the bar filled up, and there was a coolness and a strange quality of an event taking place, yet actually having not begun. There was a there, sort of like Gertrude Stein once talked about one of the areas of outside Oakland. She said there was no there. It was like in the bar itself. So we waited, we drank, and everybody had their slight buzz on, and then all of a sudden, in the mirror, I could see there was a kind of a turmoil, a kind of excitement, and I realized that the person who arrived was the was the magician, was the Kapellmeister, was the arbiter of who was and was not socially acceptable in this milieu that we had been put into. And when I looked up and saw who it was, I was stunned to see it was the wonderful actor David Niven. And he came in dressed, as elegantly as you can imagine, not like I was. His tuxedo was beautifully tailored. He had a real tie on, and he really looked very grand. And on his arm was, what can you say, 3 beautiful, if I can use the expression from the 40s and the 30s, 3 beautiful dames. And they were really set up, full of life, the 4 of them coming in. He came in, he sat down, Conrad joined him for a second, and I could see him looking over into our direction. And then at this point, while this is going on, I realized that our fate for the evening, in the sense, was being decided. And I had no way of knowing which way it was going to go. But Niven wrote a little note, and the club now was like movie time silent, right? Cricket silence, where people are anticipating what the fuck is going to happen. And he hands the waiter a note. The note comes over, and the note says, asks us to join him at the table. At this point, you could literally read the expectation of what was going in the faces of all the people in the bar, because we had diminished their sense of freedom in terms of moving around. And at that point, we sat down, and almost as soon as we sat down, the waiter brought us some drinks after we told him what we wanted. And Niven stood up with his glass, and he raised it up over his head. And he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I think here I want to propose a toast that we should all drink to the health of Mr. Kerouac. Strike a blow for freedom." And he toasted him and drank, and the whole club drank. At that moment, it was like a kind of social explosion. And if you looked around, and I did, to be able to see people's reactions, they were filled with life and a sense of relief. And at that moment, every single body, male and female, in that place, I think, would have fucking tore off their clothes and lay down in front of us and said, "Fuck me, take me, any way that you want." We were the prize. And he had opened up all of the gates of goodwill in that part of San Francisco. Afterwards, we went, I think we went and had a beat. We went later, a bite to eat. We went later to somebody's house, deep sofas, all white carpet, white walls, so-called beautiful upper-class people, whoever they were, milling around, everybody there up for grabs. And Jack disappeared at one point in the night in one direction, and I disappeared in the other. That was the end of that story. The next night we went, Robert appeared, we went to the film festival where we talked on stage again. The people were noticeably frightened of us and much more responsive and receptive to the other film, which I don't remember too much about. We appeared on stage. Robert had nothing to say. Jack had nothing to say. I babbled on a little bit and everything. But as I say, it was a repeat of everything that had happened at the club, except that David Niven was not there to break the ice. So, my friends, I hope you enjoy the evening. I love you all. In San Francisco, God bless you.
Oh, darling, this is the supreme moment.
Oh,